The sun hung low over the village of Oba, its golden rays stretching across the horizon like fingers grasping at the earth. The fields, lush and green, swayed gently in the evening breeze, their rhythm a quiet symphony that accompanied the villagers as they returned home from their daily toil. Among them was Alabi, his broad shoulders hunched under the weight of a sack of yams, his calloused hands gripping the rough fibers tightly. His face, though weathered by years of labor, bore a quiet determination, a fire that burned deep within him, fueled by dreams of a life beyond the fields. His father's words echoed in his mind. A man is only as strong as the woman by his side. Choose one who will help you rise, who will bear your burdens and stand firm with you. But little did Alabi know that the woman who would stand beside him would not only bear his burdens, but also threaten to break his spirit. The courtship between Alabi and Asake was a whirlwind of stolen glances, whispered promises, and shared dreams. Asake's laughter was a melody that seemed to silence the world around her, and Alabi, captivated, believed her words about building a future together. But the day after their wedding, cracks began to show. Asake, beautiful and radiant, seemed to care less about their life together and more about her own desires. Days turned to weeks, and Alabi found himself working harder, his back bent under the weight of responsibilities that Asake seemed to shirk. "Alabi," she would say with a sweet smile, "you're strong. Let me rest and take care of myself. You do the work, and I'll make sure everyone knows how hard you try." Her words, though sweet, filled him with bitterness. Whispers spread through the village about Asake's borrowing habits. Small things at first, but then it grew. A basket of cassava here, a jar of honey there. Alabi was forced to apologize to neighbors, repaying debts he had not incurred. But what he did not know was that Asake had a secret, a bank book hidden beneath her bed, filled with the transactions of a life unknown to him. Asake had come from wealth. Her father, a successful merchant, had left her with an inheritance, and she used this hidden wealth not out of necessity, but to fuel her bitterness. Years before, a man she had loved had betrayed her, and she vowed never to let herself be vulnerable again. Marriage to Alabi, a good man, was her means of revenge, a way to take and never give. As the months passed, Alabi's body grew weaker, his once broad shoulders now stooped under the heavy load. One fateful day, he returned to find Asake speaking to Auntie Titi. When Alabi approached, the conversation stopped abruptly, and Asake turned away. Something was amiss. That night, he confronted her, his frustration boiling over. "Where has the money gone? Where has the food gone?" he demanded. Asake's cold reply shattered him. "You are nothing but a fool." Her venomous words stung. Alabi's heart sank as the truth finally hit him. She had never loved him. She had used him. But what no one knew, not even Alabi, was that Asake's cruelty came from the wounds of her past. A man had promised her the world, only to betray her. She had vowed to never trust again. Alabi had been her pawn in a game she didn't know how to stop playing. The days that followed were a blur of despair. Alabi, crushed by betrayal, withdrew from the world. His reputation in the village crumbled, but it was only when he reached his lowest point that he realized the truth. Asake had been broken long before he met her. Her bitterness had poisoned everything, but Alabi was not one to remain broken. The pain he had endured had shown him something. True strength came from within. He vowed to rebuild his life, not because of Asake, but for himself. Meanwhile, Asake, having fled to the city with the wealth she had hidden away, soon realized that her life was emptier than ever. The lavish parties and fine clothes couldn't fill the void she felt. It was in one quiet moment, sitting alone, that she thought of Alabi, the man she had betrayed. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "What have I done?" Years after her departure from Oba, Asake had tried to bury the memories of her past in the city. Her life, filled with wealth and new acquaintances, gave her a false sense of security. But one day, her past came knocking in the form of her former lover, Adebayo. Adebayo, a wealthy man now, returned to Oba under the guise of wanting to reconnect with old friends. He had heard of her marriage to Alabi and had come to see if there was still a chance to rekindle the spark they once shared. The village's air became charged with tension as the man whose betrayal had broken Asake's heart stood before her once again. For a moment, old feelings resurfaced in Asake's heart, though clouded with anger and betrayal. Adebayo had been the first man she truly loved, but he had used her vulnerability to take advantage of her. In the depths of her loneliness, she had trusted him, only to be abandoned. Adebayo had promised her a life of luxury and comfort, but all he gave her was deceit. Alabi, on the other hand, had built a life based on honesty, hard work, and love. As the two men stood in front of her, Asake was torn. Part of her wanted to confront the man who had left her broken, but another part wanted to forget him completely. But as she spent time with Adebayo, she realized how much she had changed. She no longer sought vengeance or validation from him. She had found peace in Alabi's love, and it was through this realization that she rejected Adebayo for good. She told him in no uncertain terms, "You lost me once, and I've moved on. I've built a life with someone who values me, not for what I can give him, but for who I am." Adebayo, stunned by her transformation, left Odo Oba, never to return. But the experience marked an important turning point for Asake. She no longer allowed her past to define her future. While Asake navigated her past, the village of Odo Oba faced its own set of challenges. The arrival of outsiders looking to take control of the land for large-scale commercial ventures threatened the village's way of life. These businessmen saw the potential for profit in Odo Oba's fertile lands, and they offered Alabi a deal, something that could bring prosperity to him, but at the cost of the village's autonomy and traditions. Alabi, initially tempted by the prospects of wealth, was conflicted. The idea of elevating his family and ensuring his children's future was enticing, but something in his heart resisted. The village was more than just land to him, it was home. The people were family. As tensions grew, Alabi turned to Asake for guidance. She too had once been driven by the pursuit of wealth, but now she saw the value in preserving the life they had worked so hard to build. Together, they rallied the villagers, creating a plan to resist the outsiders. They built alliances with neighboring villages, leveraging their collective power to block the takeover. It was a long and difficult battle, but Alabi's leadership and Asake's newfound wisdom helped the villagers realize that their strength lay not in wealth, but in unity and shared purpose. Through this struggle, the village of Odo Oba grew stronger, more resilient, and more connected than ever before. They preserved their way of life while adapting to the changing world around them. Asake's childhood had been one of privilege. She was the daughter of a successful merchant, a man who owned several lands and businesses. Her father's wealth afforded her the finest things in life: beautiful clothes, education, and the attention of suitors who saw her as a prize. But beneath the surface of her privileged life was a family fraught with its own tensions. Her father, though wealthy, had been emotionally distant, preferring the company of his business associates over his family. Her mother, on the other hand, had been loving but overbearing, trying to shield Asake from the harsh realities of the world. Despite her mother's love, Asake often felt like a burden. This strained relationship with her parents left Asake longing for a deeper connection, which she found in Adebayo. But after Adebayo's betrayal, Asake felt abandoned by everyone: her parents, her lover, and even herself. She had believed in love, only to have it used against her. Her choice to marry Alabi, a man she thought she could control and manipulate, was born out of a desire for control over her life. However, she soon realized that in trying to manipulate Alabi, she had lost herself. When Asake returned to Odo Oba with Alabi, she attempted to rebuild the fractured relationship with her parents. Her mother, though still overprotective, welcomed Asake back, but her father remained cold and distant. He could never understand her decision to marry a man of lesser wealth and status, and this only added to Asake's internal struggle. She had long sought her father's approval, but she was beginning to realize that true happiness did not lie in gaining the validation of others. Alabi and Asake's children, Oluwaseun and Oluwatobi, grew up surrounded by love and security. The twin boys were bright and curious, with their father's work ethic and their mother's sharp mind. The village, once fragmented and struggling, now thrived due to the efforts of their parents. Alabi made sure to teach the boys the value of hard work, kindness, and integrity. Asake, having reconciled with her past, took on a more active role in the family's business and the community, ensuring that the children understood the importance of both compassion and independence. Oluwaseun, the older twin, showed an aptitude for leadership early on. He was naturally charismatic and often found himself speaking on behalf of others, just like his father. Oluwatobi, on the other hand, was quieter and more introspective. He had a knack for problem solving and spent his days helping his father with the logistics of their growing farm. Though they were different in personality, both boys learned to value the community and work together for the greater good of Odo Oba. As they reached adolescence, both boys were faced with choices that would shape their futures. Alabi and Asake knew that their children had opportunities they had never dreamed of, but they also wanted them to understand the responsibility that came with privilege. They encouraged the boys to take what they had learned and apply it to improve not just their lives, but the lives of others. One evening, after a community meeting, Alabi pulled his sons aside. The future of this village is in your hands now. What you do with it will determine what kind of world your children will inherit. Asake, who had once feared that